Did you know there's a psychological condition that makes you think that you're either dead or that you don't exist?
Here's how to sound smart about Cotard syndrome.
Yes, it is very real, but thankfully also extremely rare. It's known as you said, Cotard's delusion, Cotard's syndrome, also walking dead or walking corpse syndrome. There's many different names for it because, of course, as I said, it's extremely rare. And in fact, as we'll get into, many doctors don't even think to diagnose it in cases where it might actually exist because of its rarity. So the Cotard delusion is a rare mental illness in which the afflicted person holds the delusion that they are dead, either figuratively or literally. Denial of self-existence is a symptom present in 69% of the cases, yet paradoxically 55% of the patients might present delusions of immortality as well. So it's this idea that you are either physically dead or that you don't actually exist, and that existence itself is a delusion that you're suffering from, or that because you both don't exist, but you also know that you are somewhere, that you are incapable of dying any more than you already have. So obviously very difficult to understand,
Right.
and for the people who suffer from it, like, there's no ability to process that, and for your family to understand, your friends to understand, if you think that, as we're going to go into, that parts of your body are rotting off, or that you're hollow all of a sudden, like, how do you actually deal with that?
Right.
So some believe that it is not, in fact, a singular disease, but rather a condition that's associated with some combination of encephalitis, Parkinson's, brain tumors, schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder. The list actually goes on for quite a while. Because it's so atypical, many neurologists and psychologists around the world don't even think to identify it or know how. So it could be that it is one particular thing, or that it could be caused by other neurological problems. And as we're going to go into in this one case, there's a doctor who thinks he might have found a common link amongst them. Mm-hmm. So there's a patient known as Juanita, whose name has been changed to protect her privacy. She was admitted to the ward at age 46 and diagnosed with Cotard's after suffering from a stroke in her temporal lobe, which led to a lesion in her brain. She complained that her limbs had vanished, that her body was defunct and empty like a dummy. She lost the desire to work, eat, live. At times, she was free of the delusion. She recognized her body and her organs, but for much of her waking moments, she was convinced that she was not alive.
That's
extremely
really
debilitating.
Scary, right?
Yeah.
And I was wondering when you were reading this if it had a link to depression, because when people talk about feeling really depressed, they say like, "Oh, I feel dead inside," and this is almost like it's taken over part of your brain where it like really manifests that feeling.
Yeah, where that goes beyond sort of
the emotional, and it has
it goes
more
to a
of
literal,
a physical, literal
exactly.
effect.
A literal, so we have examples of a couple of other cases of Cotard's. There's the 59-year-old woman who was hospitalized in the UK after reporting feeling like she was a rotting corpse. She told doctors the blood circulation to her legs was damaged and her legs were falling off. Then there's a 62-year-old Spanish man who was convinced not only that he was dead, but also that his penis was disappearing. A middle-aged Japanese woman complained that her mind was completely blank with no thoughts, that there seemed to be no brain in her head, and she could not talk because she'd lost all her words. And so it can manifest in extremely physical forms, like thinking there's nothing physically inside your body, or that parts of your body are falling off, or this sort of figurative sense that your thoughts have disappeared or your words have disappeared.
Right, that you feel like you don't even have those anymore. But I mean, we've talked a lot about how rare this is already. Mm-hmm. You've said that that's really rare. But it kind of makes me think more broadly and realizing how complex and how I guess diverse different brains are. Do you know what I mean? So if this person has part of a mental disorder, or this person has a lesion or something like that, how that affects how they act and how they think. But even more broadly than that, like if somebody has, even like a minor chemical imbalance, or if they're just a different person with a different perspective, you can kind of realize how different people's minds are and the way that they experience things, and that can be very humbling and can give you a lot of perspective when you're interacting with other humans.
Sure. And so to jump back to Juanita, as I said, he thinks, this one researcher, thinks that he has some common link between them. And I think actually this plays into what you were just saying. So he says that with Juanita, there's a dark mass on the left side where her lesion lies, affecting the amygdala, which works in concert with the temporal lobes, areas involved in self-awareness, consciousness, and feelings. Positive emotions produced by the left hemisphere are gone. 90% of the time she is sad or angry or anxious or fearful. And let's say hypothetically that it was the case that some condition, either physical or purely psychological, causes this lesion in the brain. like, because of the complexity of the brain, slight variations in the exact position of it could lead to exactly what you were saying, where it can manifest in so many different ways, as extreme as thinking that your body is gone, or something that maybe never goes diagnosed, but leads to a slightly different perspective, for instance. Yeah. Anyway, obviously extremely debilitating and also extremely rare condition there. Super interesting as well. Quite rare. Thankfully, not many people are forced to suffer with this. Still, the research goes on in understanding how it actually happens and how it could possibly be treated as well. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.